was a freezing winter morning. Snow covered the streets like a blanket of silence. People hurried by, heads down, rushing to warmth and comfort. No one noticed the old man sitting near the corner trash bin. His hands trembled, his clothes were torn, and his eyes were hollow from hunger. But then she appeared, a young girl in a worn-out beige coat, her shoes soaked, her hair messy from the wind. She had no umbrella, no home, just a heart that refused to stop caring. Her name was Libertas Telecno. She spotted the old man shivering beside the trash can, holding his stomach. Without a second thought, she reached into her small paper bag. Her only food for the day, a single piece of bread she had saved. She knelt down in front of him and said softly, "Please, sir, take this. You need it more than I do." The old man looked up at her with eyes full of disbelief. His lips quivered. "Why would you help me, child? You look as hungry as I am." She smiled gently through her pale lips. "Because I know how it feels to be invisible." As the man took the bread, tears rolled down his wrinkled cheeks. Mixing with the falling snow, the world around them seemed to stop. Two souls, forgotten by the world, sharing the only thing they had left, kindness. But what Libertas didn't see was the black luxury SUV parked just a few feet away. Inside sat a man in an expensive Gucci suit, watching everything. His name was Ethan Blake, CEO of a global company. He had been on his way to an important meeting, but couldn't look away. He watched the homeless girl, drenched and shivering, give away her only meal. Something no billionaire meeting had ever shown him, real humanity. Ethan whispered to himself, in a world full of greed, she's still giving. He quietly asked his driver to follow her after she left, because in that moment he knew that girl wasn't just another face on the street. She was a story, a lesson, a miracle he needed to be part of. As Libertas walked away into the snow, unaware that someone powerful was about to change her life forever, the camera faded on her trembling figure, but her heart glowed brighter than any city light. Friends, sometimes the richest hearts belong to those who have nothing left to give. If this story touched your soul, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Soul of Kindness. The next day, the city woke up under the same heavy snow. Cars honked, lights flickered, and people rushed through their routines. But one man couldn't get that image out of his mind. Ethan Blake, the CEO in the Gucci suit, sat by his office window, watching the city skyline. The steam from his untouched coffee faded into the cold morning air, just like the distance between his wealth and his heart. He kept replaying what he saw, the homeless girl kneeling in the snow, giving her last piece of bread to an old man, her hands red from the cold, her eyes tired yet peaceful. It haunted him. He called his assistant, "Find me that girl, the one from yesterday, near 9th Street behind the old cafe." The assistant hesitated. "Sir, do you have her name?" Ethan's voice softened. "No, but she has a kind heart, and that's all I need to know." Hours passed. His team searched every corner of the city until finally they found her. She was sitting under a bridge, huddled with a small blanket, reading an old torn notebook by the dim streetlight. Ethan stepped out of his car, snow crunching beneath his shoes. His expensive coat looked out of place in that forgotten alley. When Libertas saw him approaching, she quickly stood up, nervous and unsure. "Are you lost, sir?" she asked politely. He shook his head, his voice calm but emotional. "No, I think I've found something I didn't know I was looking for." She frowned slightly, confused. "I don't understand." Ethan looked around, the broken walls, the sound of dripping water, the cold air, and then back at her. "Yesterday I saw you, giving your food to that old man." Her eyes widened. You saw that?" He nodded. "Yes, and it made me realize how blind I've been. I've built companies, earned billions, but I forgot what it meant to feel something real." Libertas lowered her head. "It wasn't a big thing, sir. He was hungry, and I just helped." Ethan took a deep breath. "No, it was a big thing. You gave when you had nothing. That's the greatest wealth a person can have." He reached into his coat and pulled out an envelope. "I want to help you. A job, a place to live. Whatever you need." Tears filled her eyes and she shook her head. "No, please. I didn't do it for reward." Ethan's voice trembled. "I know. That's why you deserve it even more." The snow kept falling as the two stood there in silence, one man rediscovering his humanity, one girl realizing that her kindness had touched a heart she never imagined. Ethan smiled gently. "Let me do for you what you did for him. Give hope." Libertas hesitated, then whispered softly, "Okay, but only if you promise me one thing." He raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" She smiled faintly through her tears. "Never forget that kindness doesn't need to be seen. It just needs to be felt." At that moment, Ethan felt something inside him break, the cold armor he'd built around his soul. He looked up at the sky, snowflakes melting on his face like quiet blessings. The next morning, sunlight finally broke through the clouds, soft golden rays touching the city that had forgotten warmth for so long. Libertas woke up in a small, clean room for the first time in years. The bed felt strange, almost unreal, and the smell of fresh bread filled the air. She sat up slowly, her fingers trembling as she touched the blanket. It wasn't a dream. There was a note on the bedside table. It read, "Welcome home, Libertas. You deserve a new beginning." Ethan. Tears slipped down her cheeks. For so long, she had been treated as invisible, a ghost people walked past. But someone finally saw her. Not as a homeless girl, but as a person with worth. She walked outside the room and found Ethan in the living area, dressed casually this time, holding 2 mugs of hot chocolate. "Good morning," he said with a warm smile. Libertas looked at him, overwhelmed. "Why are you doing all this for me?" He placed the mugs on the table and sighed deeply. "Because once I had nothing too. I know what it's like to fall and have no hand to lift you up. You reminded me what real strength looks like, kindness in pain." She blinked, surprised. "You? But you're a CEO." He smiled faintly. "Titles don't erase scars. Money doesn't heal loneliness." His voice broke a little. "I lost my wife 5 years ago. I buried myself in work, thinking success would fill the emptiness. But it never did, until I saw you, giving away your last piece of bread without hesitation. You reminded me what love truly looks like." Libertas wiped her eyes, whispering, "I was just trying to do what was right." Ethan nodded. "And sometimes that's what changes the world." There was a quiet moment between them. No luxury, no power, no pity, just 2 souls finally at peace. Later that day, Ethan took her to his company headquarters. The employees stared in surprise when the billionaire CEO walked in beside a young woman in a simple coat. He led her to the center of the office and said, "Everyone, meet Libertas Teleno. From today, she will be working here, not because of charity, but because she's the kind of person this company needs. The world doesn't need more rich people. It needs more kind ones." The room went silent. Some clapped, others wiped their eyes. Libertas couldn't hold back her tears. She whispered, "Thank you, sir." "For believing in me?" Ethan smiled. "No, Libertas, thank you for saving me." The camera slowly zoomed out from a homeless girl once lost in the snow to a woman standing tall beside the man whose heart she healed. Sometimes, destiny hides in small acts of kindness, waiting for the moment when love, pain, and hope collide to create something beautiful. Days passed, and life slowly began to change for Libertas Teleno. She was no longer the girl sleeping on cold pavements, clutching her torn coat for warmth. She now worked at Ethan's company, learning, growing, smiling again. But deep down, she still carried the weight of her past, the memories of hunger, loneliness, and nights spent under freezing bridges. One afternoon, as snow began to fall again, Libertas was arranging files in the CEO's office. Ethan had gone to attend a charity event. She was humming softly when the door opened, and an old, familiar voice trembled behind her. "Libby." She froze. That voice. It was one she thought she'd never hear again. Slowly she turned around. Standing at the door was the elderly man she once gave bread to. The same man who had started it all. His eyes were teary, his beard longer, but his face carried the same gentle soul. "Sir, you're alive," she whispered, her voice breaking. He nodded weakly. "I wanted to find you, to thank you. That day, your kindness saved me." I was ready to give up on life. But when you gave me that bread, you gave me hope. Libertas rushed forward and hugged him tightly, tears streaming down her cheeks. I thought I'd never see you again. You were the reason everything changed. Because of that day, I met someone who changed my life. Just then the door opened again. Ethan walked in. He froze for a moment, his eyes wide. "Mr. Callan?" he whispered. The old man looked up and smiled weakly. "Ethan, my boy, you kept your promise." Libertas looked between them in confusion. "You two know each other?" Ethan took a deep breath, his eyes moist. "Mr. Callan was my mentor. When I lost everything years ago, he helped me start over. I thought I'd never repay him, until I saw you helping him that day." The room fell silent, only the soft sound of snow tapping against the glass. Ethan knelt beside Mr. Callan, his voice shaking. "You saved us, sir. You saved me. Your kindness, it keeps living through others." Mr. Callan placed a trembling hand on both of theirs and smiled faintly. "That's the beauty of kindness, Ethan. It doesn't end. It multiplies." Tears flowed freely, three souls connected not by blood, not by wealth, but by compassion. The same bread that once saved us starving. Man had become the seed of hope that rebuilt three broken lives. Outside, the snow glowed under the evening lights, like the heavens themselves were blessing them. And for the first time, Libertas realized her life had come full circle. The kindness she gave had finally found its way back to her. Winter faded, and with it the city slowly began to bloom again. The air was warmer, the streets busier, and yet, in the middle of all the rush, one story had quietly changed countless hearts. It had been 3 months since that fateful encounter, the day Libertas, Ethan, and Mr. Callan realized how one act of kindness had tied their destinies together. The company had grown, yes, but something far greater had taken root within it: compassion. Ethan had turned one of his corporate branches into a foundation. The House of Hope. It wasn't just a name. It was a living symbol of everything Libertas had done. It provided food, shelter, and jobs for the homeless, a place where no one was turned away, and every hand was welcomed. And standing on the stage at the grand opening ceremony, Libertas found herself surrounded by cameras, journalists, and hundreds of smiling faces. The same girl who once had nothing now stood in front of a crowd that had come to honor her heart. Ethan took the microphone, his voice filled with pride. "Months ago, I saw a girl in the snow, cold, hungry, yet willing to give away her only meal. She didn't know anyone was watching. She didn't do it for fame or reward. She did it because her heart refused to let another human suffer." He turned to her, his eyes glistening. "That girl is Libertas Telekno, and she reminded me that kindness is not weakness, it is strength. Today, we open this foundation in her name, to carry her light forward." The audience rose to their feet, clapping, some even wiping tears. Libertas covered her mouth with her trembling hands, unable to hold back the emotion. She looked out at the crowd and saw the old man, Mr. Callan, sitting in the front row, smiling proudly, his eyes shimmering with peace. She took a deep breath and walked to the microphone. Her voice shook as she spoke, but her words carried the warmth of her soul. "I once thought being homeless meant having nothing, but now I know. Kindness makes you the richest person alive. I was invisible once until someone saw me, and that's all any of us really need. To be seen, to be cared for, to be loved." She paused, her eyes filled with tears. "If my story can teach you anything, let it be this: never walk past someone who needs you, because sometimes saving one person can change your entire world." The crowd fell silent. Even the air felt sacred in that moment. Ethan stood beside her, placing his hand on her shoulder. Mr. Callan's eyes closed softly, a tear escaping down his cheek, the kind that holds both pain and peace. Outside, as the golden sunlight fell through the glass walls of the new foundation, the words carved on its entrance shimmered. "And friends, the smallest act of love can ripple through the world in ways we may never see. So never stop being kind, because even unseen kindness can create miracles." If this story touched your soul, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Soul of Kindness.